Okay, let's dive right in and completely challenge our basic understanding of optimism and pessimism. Today in this explainer, we're unpacking a brilliant concept from our source text called the paradox of agency and outcome. And honestly, what we're about to discover is going to take everything you thought you knew about positive thinking and just flip it entirely upside down.
Think about this for a second. Is optimism actually setting you up for heartbreak? I know, we naturally assume hoping for the best is always a good thing. From a really young age, society conditions us to look on the bright side, right? But today, through the lens of our source material, we'll discover why that exact mindset, that passive hope that everything's just going to magically work out, might actually be a direct, unhindered path to profound disappointment. It's a bold claim, for sure, but the logic behind it is pretty undeniable. Which brings us to Section 1, the agency paradox. To really understand why blind optimism backfires, we need to look at how we view the future versus our own abilities. Our source text introduces two intentional oxymorons. Yeah, oxymorons, that force us to completely rethink resilience. Normally, we treat optimism and pessimism as mutually exclusive. You're either one or the other. But what happens when we mix and match how we feel about the world with how we feel about our own personal agency? Well, we end up creating these entirely new psychological frameworks. Let's look at the first one in Section 2, the hopeless optimism trap. The text defines hopeless optimism as being highly optimistic about the future, but completely hopeless regarding your personal responsibility. Just imagine sitting in a boat without oars, cheerfully assuming the current will magically take you exactly where you want to go. You have super high hopes for the destination, but absolutely zero belief in your own ability to steer. Now, this mindset triggers a highly damaging chain reaction. Because you feel hopeless about your own abilities, what do? Well, you start relying heavily on others. You depend entirely on external factors for your own happiness. And since you firmly believe you lack personal agency, you make absolutely zero investment in preparation. You aren't building any skills, you're just sort of waiting, expecting external circumstances to automatically turn out good. You've completely surrendered the steering wheel. Because you've outsourced your success to random external factors, the text warns with absolute clarity that you will most probably end up disappointed and totally heartbroken. The universe, frankly, is incredibly unpredictable. So when those automatic good circumstances you were banking on completely fail to materialize, you have no backup plan, no internal strength, no preparation to fall back on. That optimism, it was just a mirage setting you up for a devastating fall. But there's a way out of this. In Section 3, the hopeful pessimism advantage. There is a brilliantly counterintuitive solution here called hopeful pessimism. This means being pessimistic about the future, but incredibly hopeful regarding your personal responsibility. It flips the trap entirely. By acknowledging that the world just isn't going to automatically do the work for you, you're forced to expect the absolute best from yourself. You aren't trusting the current anymore. You're fully trusting your own ability to row. Now, the source material's stance here sounds a bit gritty at first. It states, external events are random and generally people do not care. Ouch, right? But actually accepting this is deeply empowering. It strips away that comforting illusion that the universe owes you a favor. Once you accept that no one is coming to save you, you suddenly realize you have all the power to save yourself. This realization inherently motivates a really powerful progression. It starts with expecting random, often unhelpful external events. Because of that realistic expectation, you move to the next step, where you actively develop yourself internally. That leads to becoming truly self-reliant so you can actually overcome difficulties. And all of this culminates in true resilience. You reach a higher standard not because things were easy, but because you literally prepared for them to be hard. Let's bring this all together in Section 4, reclaiming your personal agency. Here's the core choice we face every single day. You can fall into the trap, being overly optimistic about some vague, perfect future, but totally hopeless about your own agency. Or you can take the advantage, being pessimistic about an unpredictable future, but deeply, truly confident in your own responsibility. It's the fundamental choice to either rely on the future to fix things or to rely on yourself to handle whatever the future happens to bring. When we break down these mindsets, the outcomes are practically guaranteed. Think about it. If you expect good things to just automatically happen, but have zero personal agency, well, that essentially guarantees heartbreak. But if you expect unhelpful random events and you counter that with high self-reliance, you guarantee resilience. Personal agency is quite literally the only variable we actually control when navigating a completely random world. The text distills this perfectly into what I'd call the ultimate fortress of resilience. Quote,
Here you are, pessimistic on the future, but hopeful on your personal responsibility and agency. This one mental shift, it's a real game changer. It takes you from being a passive victim of circumstance straight to being the active architect of your own survival and success. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to ask yourself, will you wait for the world to perfectly align, or will you become your own source of hope? The source material leaves us with a pretty stark reality. Hope isn't something you just magically find out there in the world. No, it's something you generate in here, through your own agency. So knowing what you know now, what's your next move going to be?